Teresa was clothed from head to foot in the Count of San Felice's daughter. Vampa took Cucumetto's body in his arms and conveyed it to the grotto, while in her turn, Teresa remained outside. If a second traveler had passed, he would have seen a strange thing. A shepherdess watching her flock, clad in a cashmere gown, with earrings and necklace of pearls, diamond pins, and buttons of sapphire, emeralds, and rubies. He would, no doubt, have believed that he had returned to the times of Florian, and would have declared, on reaching Paris, that he had met an alpine shepherdess seated at the foot of the Sabine hill. At the end of a quarter of an hour, Vampa quitted the grotto. His costume was no less elegant than that of Teresa. He wore a vest of garnet-colored velvet, with buttons of cut gold, a silk waistcoat covered with embroidery, a Roman scarf tied around his neck, a cartridge box worked with gold and red and green silk, sky-blue velvet breeches fastened above the knee with diamond buckles, garters of deerskin worked with 1,000 arabesques, and a hat whereon hung ribbons of all colors. 2 watches hung from his girdle, and a splendid poniard was in his belt. Teresa uttered a cry of admiration. Vampa in this attire resembled a painting by Leopold Robert or Schnetz. He assumed the entire costume of Cucumetto. The young man saw the effect produced on his betrothed, and a smile of pride passed over his lips. "Now," he said to Teresa, "are you ready to share my fortune, whatever it may be?" "Oh, yes," exclaimed the young girl enthusiastically. "And follow me wherever I go." "To the world's end." "Then take my arm and let us on. We have no time to lose." The young girl did so without questioning her lover as to where he was conducting her, for he appeared to her at this moment as handsome, proud, and powerful as a god. They went towards the forest, and soon entered it. Okay, some things are crackling in my brain right now, dots that are not yet connected. I'm going to do this out loud, and it's going to get messy. You ready to go on this journey with me? I'm going to say a few things, and in your mind's eye, I want you to determine whether I'm talking about Dante or Vampa. A concealed grotto, a man assuming disguises, access to jewels and fancy gems and decorations, a man betrothed to someone he has loved his whole life, a man who is somewhat of a savant with every new thing he learns. I don't know what the parallels mean between Vampa and Dante, but it appeared to me when Vampa appeared, and it says here, it goes through that whole rigmarole with what he looks like wearing Cucumetto's costume, but basically the line that said he had assumed the entire costume of Cucumetto really just was like, oh, well, Dante does that with disguises all the time. Now, Dante isn't necessarily assuming the identity of a person he's slain that we know of, but he is, they are both putting on disguises of sorts. What does Vampa have in mind here? He's taking the costume of Cucumetto, all of this. To be honest, I was surprised that Cucumetto was dressed this well. I should check my own prejudices at the door, because I was thinking that a brigand, a bandit, would not be, dressed to the tilt with buttons cut of gold and silk and embroidery and cartridge boxes and velvet breeches and diamond buckles and all this stuff. Like, I just kind of pictured him as a normal run-of-the-mill bandit. But does he have all of these things because he was the chief of the bandits? And where is Vampa taking Teresa into the forest? Is he going to take over the band of bandits? Band of bandits. I wonder if that's where... I wonder if those terms are connected somehow. Is he going to take over the clan of bandits for his own means? Because at this point, he knows Teresa desires a life that he cannot give her, and she does not seem to have the scruples to care where this stuff comes from, since she knows that she is wearing Carmela's outfit. So is that where this might be heading? Is Vampa is gonna start up his own crime syndicate and steal everything he wants to for Teresa? we're hitting the end of the chapter, if you can believe it. I don't even remember who I was at the beginning of this chapter. I've changed so much as a person, I feel like, since we started. So, because I had pulled out this biography before and read to you something that I had paraphrased to you previously, I thought maybe I could pull out another excerpt. Again, I have to paraphrase it because this is copyrighted and I can't read it verbatim. But here's some Mackay information on how they worked together. Apparently, according to this biography, again, this is Alexander Dumas, The King of Romance by F.W.J. Hemings. In his information about how Dumas and Mackay worked together, he says that first, Dumas and Mackay would talk about the work before it was written in some detail. Then Mackay would essentially be left to prepare a section of the book in draft form. Then Dumas would essentially take what was written in draft form and he'd read it over and entirely rewrite it, but not deviate from the structure. And the author goes on to say that this is essentially like improvising on a theme. I know nothing about music. Music is one area that I just don't understand. I find it magical and I love it, but I don't understand how it works. I have no vocabulary to talk about it, but you hear different renditions of the same classical track and you can have variations on a theme. And I think that's essentially what Dumas would do when he would look at characters, ideas, concepts for scenes, and strip them down to the bone and then build them back up so that it's essentially the same structure, same song, but maybe using a slightly different instrumentation. How about I use a metaphor that I know a bit more about? The show Curb Your Enthusiasm. Larry David would not have full scripts a lot of the time. He would create outlines of scenes, or the writers would, and all of the performers in that scene knew where they needed to get to. They had a beginning and an end destination that they had to get to, and roughly a time constraint, because they are making a TV show, for how long they had to take before they got there. And then they would just improvise from one moment to the next. Here's the scenario, none of which I'm going to give the specifics of here because that show deals with some topics that, I don't think are easy to just mention casually in passing. But an uncomfortable situation premise arises, and they realize that they have to get from point A to point B by the end of the scene. And here's your character. Go with it and see what comes out of it. That seems to be how Dumas is rewriting a lot of work from Mackay and his other collaborators. Is like, okay, the scene is getting us from point A to point B. This is generally what happens in it. I'm going to change the characters up a bit. I'm going to give the dialogue an overhaul. I'm going to trim this up, or I'm going to expand on this. But at the end of the day, the scene still gets you from point A to point B in the way the collaborators had originally wrote the draft. I'm sure I'm overgeneralizing here, but that's essentially what I took from it while reading the biography. Okay, that is enough for today. Let us continue here tomorrow. We only have 3 episodes left of this chapter, folks. I can't wait. Join me here tomorrow. We're almost done. Until then, okay, goodbye. The Countdown of Monte Cristo is part of the Gruntwork Podcast Network. This show is produced, edited, and hosted by Landon Solano. The original text of The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexander Dumas. Theme song by Magic Solo. If you want to support the show and others like it, visit patreon.com/gruntworkpod. Thank you for listening. See you tomorrow.